Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video we will cover some behavioural strategies to help reduce body fat and maintain a leaner physique. Before we explore how to maintain a lean physique, we first need to cover the concept of body fat settling ranges. A settling range is essentially a level of body fat which lifters can comfortably maintain. This means the trainee is in a physiologically healthy state and they aren't displaying a high level of restraint to sustain this weight. The settling range has both a high and low point. This means if trainees are too lean, they may experience negative consequences, and if body fat is too high, they may also experience negative consequences. Although for this video we will only really be discussing the lower end of this range, as this is the goal for most lifters. For this video, let's call this lower end of our settling range our settling point, or set point for short. So how do we know what our set point is? Well, there are many factors which will determine where this point is, and it will be highly individual for each person. So rather than giving solid figures, it is probably more helpful to look at the factors which influence our set point so that we can actually come up with strategies to maintain a leaner physique. I have categorized the influential factors into 3 general categories, in no particular order. First is genetics. This is a controversial one because we don't fully understand how genetics influence our set point. However, genetics generally influence everything else, so it makes sense that it would have an influence on how lean we can maintain our physique. Just to be clear, everyone in the world is able to get extremely lean if they were forced to eat in a calorie deficit, regardless of genetics. However, the point at which each person can maintain a comfortable level of body fat won't be the same for everyone and will probably be influenced by genetic factors. We aren't going to be discussing this any further in this video because ultimately we can't do anything about it, so it has no practical use. We just need to be aware that genetics probably plays a role, making our set point different between individuals. The second category is muscle mass. Generally, someone with more muscle mass will probably find it easier to maintain a leaner physique because more of their total weight is taken up by muscle. Muscle is also more metabolically active than fat, so more muscular trainees will be able to eat more calories at a leaner level. This will probably help with hunger and satiety levels, making a leaner body fat more sustainable. The good thing is that this is something we can change. Most people watching this video probably want to maximize muscle growth, so for this video we can assume that trainees are aiming to increase muscle mass already. And the third category is our habits and behaviors. This is a very broad topic and encompasses many different factors. Essentially, this refers to lifestyle behaviors and habits that are developed over years. This can be influenced by a range of elements, from unchangeable environmental factors to personal interests. It is these habits and behaviors that have a large potential to be modified and can make a significant difference in where our set point lies. So for the rest of this video, we will be discussing how we can modify our behaviors and habits to help maintain a leaner body fat level. Before getting into these strategies, we first need to cover the concept of energy balance. Ultimately, energy balance is what our body fat comes down to. If we want to maintain a leaner physique, then ultimately we are trying to manipulate energy balance to increase energy expenditure and/or decrease calorie intake. So all of the behavioral strategies we will discuss are ultimately trying to help us eat fewer calories and burn more calories throughout the day. So if we know this basically comes down to a simple energy balance equation, why can't we just track our food and eat less? Well, this makes sense in theory, however humans aren't robots. Food is more than just fuel for us. Food is a part of culture, social events, and our emotional state. While tracking food can certainly work, it is probably not something to rely upon for the rest of our lives. This is because it doesn't necessarily teach us how to make practically smart decisions. If we don't have our pre-planned meals or our phone app to tell us what to eat, then what can we rely on to eat in a healthy and sensible manner? Well, this is where behavior and habits come into play. If we are able to develop good lifestyle habits, then this is something that we can do every day at an almost subconscious level. So no matter what our current situation is, we can rely on these behaviors to carry us through. Let's now cover some strategies to help us increase our energy expenditure and decrease our calorie intake. The first strategy is to primarily eat foods with a low calorie density. This means foods which have a low number of calories per unit of weight or per volume. This will allow us to eat more total weight of food with a lower number of calories throughout the day. This will help minimize hunger, which will reduce the likelihood of food cravings and binge episodes. This doesn't mean we should completely restrict ourselves of any tasty high-calorie foods. It just means that the majority of meals throughout the day should have a fairly low calorie density relative to the amount of volume that we eat. A simple way to achieve this is by ensuring we have a good serving of either fruits or vegetables with each meal, and to consume primarily whole, minimally processed foods. For example, the classic bodybuilding meal of chicken breasts, rice, and broccoli is going to have a much lower calorie density compared with a meal such as a burger and fries. The next strategy to help us maintain a lean physique is to use your intuitive hunger and satiety signals. This refers to being conscious of how physiologically hungry you are throughout the day and how satiated you are after eating. If you are truly hungry, then you may want to eat a meal. However, if you aren't hungry, then maybe you can wait until you feel like you are. Furthermore, after you eat a meal, you probably want to aim to be satiated but not overly full. This will help ensure you eat a reasonable amount and not overindulge with each meal. Next is protein intake. Ideally, we want to have a fairly high daily protein intake for a few key benefits. Firstly, protein intake supports muscle growth, which, as we discussed, is probably an important factor to help us maintain a lean physique. So assuming we are performing resistance training, trainees want to ensure they consume a high daily protein intake to maximize muscle growth. Second, high protein diets appear to be slightly more satiating compared with non-high protein diets. This can help trainees feel more satiated after eating and reduce food cravings throughout the day. And lastly, protein appears to have a higher thermic effect. This means that protein will require more energy expenditure to digest and store compared with fat and carbohydrate. While this difference in energy expenditure is minimal, it still has a small positive benefit. As a practical recommendation, trainees should aim to consume a total of around 1.5 to 2 grams per kilogram per day, which is equivalent to around 0.75 to 1 gram per pound of protein per day from various different sources. Now moving away from the diet strategies, we have the exercise interventions. The first exercise strategy that can be beneficial is weight training with the goal of increasing muscle mass. Weight training will simply help build muscle mass over time. This means our body fat will be lower at the same body weight compared to if the trainee didn't perform resistance training. Not only will this directly make us leaner, it will increase our total daily energy expenditure. This is because, like we mentioned earlier, muscle is more energy expensive than fat, so our metabolic rate will increase simply by having more muscle mass. However, it is assumed that resistance training is already being performed, so we don't really need to go into any further details. And the last strategy to help maintain a leaner physique is general physical activity levels. This refers to how much total exercise or movement you perform throughout a day. Weight training sessions are included in this, but it also encompasses all other forms of physical activity. This includes dedicated cardio, casual walking, cycling, gardening, cleaning, and any other form of movement you can think of. Essentially, increasing our total physical activity throughout the day seems to help people maintain a leaner physique. This is probably due to a number of reasons, but primarily it will increase energy expenditure, and it seems to play a role in regulating hunger and satiety. Therefore, it may be useful for trainees to increase general physical activity levels in some capacity. This can be achieved through more dedicated cardio, more intentional walking, or incorporating more exercise into their daily lifestyle, such as walking to local shops, cycling for transport, or performing household chores. A useful way to quantify general physical activity is by using a step tracker. This will allow trainees to roughly estimate how much physical activity they are performing each day. Trainees can then try to hit a minimum step count each day to ensure their physical activity levels are appropriate. While these are useful strategies to implement, it can take time to adopt these behaviors and execute them consistently. Everyone has come from different environments and backgrounds, so the current habits and behaviors we are accustomed to will be different. So for some, this will be a drastic lifestyle shift, while others may already be checking most of these boxes. However, if our goal is to maintain a leanness somewhere close to our set point, then there is probably something everyone can improve on. The point is that behavior change generally takes years to achieve subconscious competence. However, the benefit is that developing good habits will stick for the long term and help us stay relatively lean for the rest of our lives if desired. So to finish this video, let's summarize what we have discussed. First, we should understand that we have an approximate set point, which is essentially the leanest body fat we can maintain without significant restraint or declines in health markers. This is determined by genetics, muscle mass, and habits and behaviors. While genetics is unchangeable, we can do something about muscle mass and behaviors. Assuming that people watching this video are already training to maximize muscle growth, habits and behaviors are really where we can make a big impact. We have nutritional strategies like calorie density of foods, using intuitive hunger signals, and total daily protein intake that we can manipulate to limit calorie intake. Furthermore, weight training and general physical activity levels will also influence how lean we can maintain our physique. By implementing these strategies over time, we can make relatively permanent behavior changes which can allow us to maintain a fairly lean physique over time. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.